Marcus wiped the rain from his glasses as he stepped out of his apartment building into the Seattle drizzle. The veterinary clinic where he worked nights was only 6 blocks away, but the autumn weather made every step feel longer. At 28, he had grown comfortable with his quiet routine of caring for animals and living alone in his modest one-bedroom apartment. The alley behind his building had become a regular stop during his evening walks. Street cats gathered there, drawn by the warmth of the building's heating vents and the food Marcus left in small bowls. Tonight he counted 7 familiar faces among the strays, their eyes reflecting the streetlight as they watched him approach with their dinner. "Evening, everyone," Marcus said softly, setting down the bowls of kibble and fresh water. The cats maintained their cautious distance until he stepped back, then approached to eat with the practiced wariness of creatures who had learned to survive on the streets. As he turned to leave, a weak mewing sound caught his attention. Behind a stack of cardboard boxes, barely visible in the shadows, lay a small black cat. Unlike the others, this one didn't flee when Marcus approached. Instead, it lifted its head weakly, revealing striking golden eyes that seemed to hold an unusual intelligence. The cat was clearly in poor condition. Its fur was matted and dull, and Marcus could see the outline of ribs beneath its thin coat. But what struck him most were those eyes. They held a depth that seemed almost human-like, as if the creature was studying him with the same intensity he was studying it. "Hey there, little one," Marcus whispered, slowly extending his hand. The cat didn't hiss or back away. Instead, it struggled to lift its head higher, as if trying to maintain some dignity despite its obviously desperate state. When Marcus gently picked it up, the cat was surprisingly light, and he could feel its rapid heartbeat against his palm. Back in his apartment, Marcus set up a makeshift recovery area in his bathroom with soft towels, food, and water. The black cat accepted his care with an unusual composure that reminded him more of a patient tolerating medical treatment than a frightened stray. As he examined the cat under proper lighting, Marcus noticed several things that puzzled him. First, despite its malnourished state, the cat had no visible injuries or signs of disease. Its teeth were pristine white, and its claws, though overgrown, were perfectly healthy. Most strange of all were subtle markings along its forehead, what looked like very faint, almost metallic lines that formed an intricate pattern. Marcus rubbed his eyes, thinking the long hours at the clinic were making him see things, but the markings remained visible under the bathroom light. The cat watched him with those golden eyes throughout the examination, never once trying to scratch or bite. When Marcus offered it food, it ate with careful, measured bites rather than the desperate gulping he expected from a starving animal. Everything about this cat suggested intelligence and self-control that went far beyond normal feline behavior. Over the following days, Marcus fell into a new routine. He would check on the black cat before leaving for work and again when he returned home. The transformation was remarkable. The cat's fur began to regain its luster, revealing not just solid black coloring but subtle undertones that seemed to shift in different lighting, sometimes appearing to have deep purple or blue highlights. What impressed Marcus most was how quickly the cat adapted to indoor life. It used the litter box immediately without any training, seemed to understand that the kitchen counter was off limits after being told just once, and positioned itself near the window each evening as if waiting for Marcus to return from work. The cat never tried to escape, even when Marcus left windows open for fresh air. On the 5th night, Marcus woke to find the cat sitting perfectly still on his windowsill, staring out at the night sky. The moonlight illuminated those strange markings on its forehead more clearly, and for a moment Marcus could have sworn they were actually glowing with a faint silver light. When he sat up in bed to get a better look, the cat turned to face him, and their eyes met in the darkness. In that moment, Marcus felt something he couldn't quite explain, a sense of recognition, as if he was looking at someone rather than something. The feeling was so strong that he found himself saying, "Who are you really?" The cat tilted its head slightly, and Marcus could have sworn he saw understanding flicker in those golden eyes. The next morning, Marcus decided to take the cat to his clinic for a thorough examination. As a veterinary technician, he had access to equipment that could rule out any health issues and perhaps explain some of the unusual characteristics he had observed. He named the cat Luna, partly for those moonlight vigils at the window, and partly because something about the name felt right when he looked into those intelligent eyes. Luna rode to the clinic in a carrier without complaint. though Marcus noticed she seemed more interested in observing the city streets through the carrier's mesh door than showing any signs of stress about the trip. At the clinic, Dr. Patricia Wells, the senior veterinarian, agreed to help with a complete workup. The examination results were puzzling. Luna appeared to be in perfect health despite her recent malnourished state. Her blood work showed nothing unusual, though Dr. Wells commented that she had never seen such perfectly balanced levels in any animal. The X-rays revealed normal bone structure, but when Dr. Wells looked more closely at the images, she frowned. "Marcus, look at this," she said, pointing to the X-ray of Luna's skull. "See these density variations here? It's almost like there's some kind of metallic implant, but it's so perfectly integrated with the bone structure that it looks natural. I've never seen anything like it." Marcus studied the X-ray, comparing it to normal feline skull images. Dr. Wells was right. There were distinct patterns in the bone density that corresponded exactly with the faint markings he had noticed on Luna's forehead. Whatever was creating those markings went deeper than just the fur and skin. As they discussed the unusual findings, Luna sat calmly on the examination table, apparently unbothered by the attention. But Marcus noticed that her golden eyes never left his face, and once again he had the unsettling feeling that she understood every word they were saying. When Dr. Wells reached for another instrument, Luna's gaze briefly shifted to track the movement before returning to Marcus with what looked distinctly like a knowing expression. The mystery of Luna deepened with each passing day, but Marcus found himself caring less about finding explanations and more about the strange sense of companionship this unusual cat brought to his previously solitary life. 3 weeks after finding Luna, Marcus began noticing changes that went beyond her physical recovery. The other street cats had started behaving differently around his building. Instead of scattering when he approached with food, they now waited in organized groups, almost like they were forming some kind of hierarchy. More surprisingly, cats from other neighborhoods had begun appearing in the alley, as if word had somehow spread through the feline community. Luna seemed to be at the center of these changes. During their evening feeding routine, Marcus observed her positioning herself where she could see all the other cats while remaining slightly elevated on a wooden crate. The other cats would approach her first, touching noses in what looked like some form of greeting or acknowledgement, before moving to their food bowls. One evening, Marcus watched in amazement as Luna appeared to mediate a dispute between two tomcats over territory. Instead of the usual hissing and fighting, both cats sat facing Luna while she made a series of soft chirping sounds. After several minutes, the cats touched noses with Luna and walked away in opposite directions, the conflict apparently resolved. Marcus had worked with animals for years, but he had never witnessed behavior like this. The changes weren't limited to cat behavior. Marcus began experiencing vivid dreams that felt more like memories than products of his imagination. In these dreams, he saw vast cities with architecture unlike anything on Earth, spires that seemed to be carved from single crystals, bridges that floated without visible support, and beings that looked humanoid but moved with an otherworldly grace. The most recurring image was of a figure in flowing robes standing before a great assembly, though the face was always obscured. During the day, Marcus found himself distracted by these dreams. At the clinic, Dr. Wells noticed his preoccupation and asked if everything was all right. Marcus considered telling her about the dreams, but decided they would sound too bizarre. Instead, he mentioned that Luna had been having trouble sleeping, which wasn't entirely untrue. The cat had begun spending entire nights at the window, staring at the stars with an intensity that suggested she was searching for something specific. The breakthrough came on a Friday night, when Marcus was awakened by an unusual sound from the living room. It wasn't quite humming and wasn't quite singing, but it had a melodic quality that seemed to resonate in his bones. Following the sound, he found Luna sitting in the center of the room, surrounded by soft, silvery light that appeared to be emanating from her fur. Marcus stood frozen in his doorway, unable to process what he was seeing. The light pulsed gently in rhythm with Luna's breathing, and those faint markings on her forehead were now clearly visible as intricate symbols that glowed with their own inner fire. As he watched, Luna turned to look at him, and for the first time since finding her, she spoke, not with words, but directly into his mind. "Do not be afraid, Marcus Chen." The voice was distinctly feminine with an accent he couldn't place. "I have been waiting for the right moment to reveal myself to you. Your kindness has given me the strength to begin healing from injuries that go far deeper than physical wounds. Marcus felt his knees weaken, and he gripped the doorframe for support. This isn't possible, he whispered aloud. Cats don't talk. People don't glow. This has to be a dream. The light around Luna intensified slightly, and he felt a wave of gentle amusement. I am not exactly a cat, though this form has served me well during my recovery. My true nature is difficult to explain in your language. Perhaps it would be easier to show you. Before Marcus could respond, images began flowing into his mind, not chaotic like his dreams, but clear and purposeful. He saw Luna's true form, a being that was distinctly humanoid but clearly not human, with scales that shifted color like oil on water and wings that seemed to be made of the same silvery light he was now witnessing. In the visions, she wore elaborate robes and a crown that matched the symbols on her forehead. I am Zephyria, queen of the draconic realm of Avaleth. The mental voice continued. 3 months ago, assassins from a rival faction severely wounded me during a diplomatic mission to a neighboring star system. I barely escaped with my life, but my ship was destroyed in Earth's atmosphere. This form was the only shape I could maintain while my true body healed. Marcus slowly sat down on his couch, his mind struggling to process the information. You're saying you're an alien? A dragon? A queen? The questions tumbled out faster than he could organize them. All of those terms apply, though none capture the complete truth. Zephyria replied. The silvery light began to fade, and she returned to her cat appearance, though her golden eyes retained a subtle glow. What matters now is that my enemies have tracked me to this world. They believe I am dead, but they will not leave without confirming it. Your planet is in danger because of my presence here. The weight of her words settled over Marcus like a cold blanket. What kind of danger? What are we talking about here? Zephyria padded closer to him, her movements now carrying a regal quality that made her previous behavior suddenly make sense. My people have the technology to turn entire planets into lifeless rocks if they believe it serves their purposes. The faction that attacked me has no regard for what you would call innocent life. They see humans as primitive creatures barely worth considering. Marcus felt anger rising alongside his fear. So they'd destroy our entire planet just to make sure you're dead? Not just to ensure my death, Zephyria's mental voice carried deep sadness. They would do it to prevent me from forming an alliance with humanity. You see, Marcus, your species possesses something that my people have lost over millennia of technological advancement. The ability to surprise us. Human creativity, your capacity for rapid adaptation, your talent for finding solutions that more advanced civilizations overlook. These traits make you incredibly valuable as allies. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. That's why you chose to stay with me, isn't it? This wasn't just about recovering from injuries. Initially, yes, survival was my only concern, Zephyria admitted. But as I observed you caring for creatures that most humans ignore or avoid, as I watched you show kindness without expecting anything in return, I began to understand why my advisors believed an alliance with humanity could benefit both our species. Marcus stood up and began pacing, his mind racing. How long do we have before these enemies of yours show up? My sensors indicate ships entering your solar system within the next few days, Zephyria replied. They will likely begin their search in major population centers, which gives us a small advantage. However, once they begin scanning for my energy signature, they will locate me quickly. Energy signature? Zephyria's cat form began to glow again, more softly this time. Every member of my species carries unique bioelectric patterns. The healing process has been restoring my natural energy levels, which makes me easier to detect. Soon I will be unable to suppress my signature without risking permanent damage to my true form. Marcus stopped pacing and looked directly at her. What do you need me to do? The question seemed to surprise her. You would help me even knowing the risk to your world? You said yourself that they'd probably destroy Earth anyway, just to be safe, Marcus replied. Besides, you've been living in my apartment for weeks. I've gotten kind of attached to having you around, even if you are an alien dragon queen in disguise. For the first time since her revelation, Marcus felt genuine warmth in Zephyria's mental voice. Your people's capacity for loyalty continues to amaze me. Very well, Marcus Chen. If you are willing to help, then perhaps we can find a way to save both your world and mine. The next morning brought an urgency that Marcus had never experienced before. Zephyria had spent the night in her true form, though she kept herself mostly invisible to avoid shocking him further. Marcus could sense her presence as a warm, massive shape that somehow fit comfortably in his small living room, defying basic physics in ways that made his head hurt when he thought about it too deeply. "We need to establish communication with your government," Zephyria explained as Marcus prepared coffee with shaking hands, "but not through normal channels. My enemies will be monitoring all standard military and political communications. We need someone with enough influence to reach the right people, but who operates outside typical government structures." Marcus nearly dropped his coffee mug. "I'm a veterinary technician from Seattle. I don't exactly have connections to world leaders." "But you have something more valuable," Zephyria replied, her mental voice carrying a note of confidence that surprised him. "You have Dr. Patricia Wells." "Dr. Wells? She's a veterinarian, not a diplomat. Check her background more carefully, Marcus. You might be surprised by what you discover." Curious despite his skepticism, Marcus used his laptop to search for information about his colleague. What he found made him sit back in amazement. Dr. Patricia Wells had indeed been a veterinarian for the past 12 years. But before that, she had served as a biochemical weapons specialist for the CDC and had published several papers on detecting unknown biological threats. More significantly, she was the daughter of General Robert Wells, currently serving as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. "How did you know this?" Marcus asked aloud. "During my recovery, I extended my senses throughout the building to monitor for threats," Zephyria explained. "Dr. Wells carries trace amounts of compounds that indicate extensive exposure to classified research facilities. Her communication patterns also suggest someone with military training." Despite her civilian profession, Marcus stared at his phone, knowing he needed to call Dr. Wells but having no idea how to begin such a conversation. "Hey, Patricia. My cat is actually an alien dragon queen and we need to contact your father about an impending invasion." Seemed like a sure path to unemployment and possibly psychiatric evaluation. Zephyria seemed to sense his hesitation. Perhaps a more gradual approach would be wise. "Invite her here under the pretense of examining me for those unusual markings. Once she arrives, I can reveal myself in a controlled manner." Marcus made the call, trying to keep his voice steady, as he explained that Luna's condition had taken an interesting turn, and asked if Dr. Wells would be willing to make a house call. To his relief, she agreed, mentioning that she had been curious about the unusual X-ray results. An hour later, Dr. Wells arrived with a portable examination kit. Marcus led her into the living room where Luna sat in her normal cat form. Though Marcus now noticed details he had missed before, the way she held herself with perfect posture, the deliberate precision of her movements, and the calculating intelligence behind her golden eyes. "She looks much healthier," Dr. Wells observed, setting up her equipment. "The improvement in her coat condition is remarkable. Have you noticed any changes in the markings we observed?" "Actually, yes," Marcus replied, his heart racing. "They've become much more pronounced, especially at night. Sometimes they almost seem to glow." Dr. Wells looked at him sharply. "Glow? Marcus, that's not possible with any known biological mechanism. Are you sure you're not seeing reflected light from—" She stopped mid-sentence as Luna began to emit the soft, silvery radiance Marcus had witnessed the night before. Dr. Wells took a step backward, her professional composure cracking for the first time since Marcus had known her. "Don't be alarmed." Zephyria's mental voice touched both their minds simultaneously. "I mean you no harm, Dr. Wells. In fact, I desperately need your help." Dr. Wells sat down heavily in Marcus's armchair, her eyes never leaving Luna. "This is impossible. Telepathy doesn't exist. Bioluminescence in mammals is theoretically possible, but you've spent enough time around classified projects to know that impossible is often just another word for not yet understood." Zephyria interrupted gently. "Your background makes you uniquely qualified to help me communicate with Earth's leadership about a threat that could destroy your entire planet." Over the next hour, Zephyria shared her story with Dr. Wells, including detailed information about her enemy's technology and intentions. Dr. Wells listened with the same careful attention she brought to diagnosing sick animals, occasionally asking pointed questions that demonstrated her military intelligence background. "Assuming I believe all of this," Dr. Wells said finally, "and I'm not entirely sure I have a choice given what I'm witnessing, what exactly are you proposing?" "A formal first contact scenario, but one that serves both our species," Zephyria replied. Your military needs advance warning about the enemy ships and information about their capabilities. My people need to see that humanity is sophisticated enough to be valuable allies rather than primitive creatures to be eliminated along with me. Dr. Wells pulled out her phone. I need to call my father. But Marcus, you understand that once I make this call, both your lives will change permanently. The military will want to study everything about this situation. Marcus looked at Luna, seeing Zephyria's true nature shining through the cat's golden eyes. What's the alternative? Let these aliens blow up the planet? No alternative at all, Dr. Wells agreed, dialing her father's direct line. Dad, it's Patricia. I need you to clear your schedule and come to Seattle immediately. Don't ask questions, don't bring anyone else, and don't tell anyone where you're going. We have a legitimate first contact situation. The conversation that followed was tense and brief. General Wells clearly thought his daughter had suffered some kind of breakdown, but something in her voice convinced him to agree to a private meeting. He would arrive in Seattle within 6 hours. During the wait, Zephyria began preparing for her full revelation. The process required her to gradually return to her true form, which meant Marcus's apartment started experiencing what could only be described as reality distortions. Furniture rearranged itself to accommodate her growing size. The temperature regulated itself perfectly despite her natural body heat, and the very air seemed to shimmer with barely contained energy. Your dwelling is adapting to my presence, Zephyria explained, when Marcus commented on the changes. It's a natural response when beings of my species inhabit spaces designed for other life forms. The effect is temporary but necessary for my comfort. By late afternoon, Marcus barely recognized his apartment. The walls had expanded somehow. The ceiling had raised itself several feet, and crystalline formations had begun growing in the corners, providing the specific wavelengths of light that Zephyria required. Through it all, the street cats continued their vigil in the alley below, now clearly serving as some kind of honor guard. When General Wells arrived, escorted by Dr. Wells, he took one look at the transformed apartment and reached for his sidearm. Marcus quickly stepped forward, hands raised peacefully. General Wells, I know this looks insane, but please let us explain before you do anything that might make this situation worse. The general was a tall, stern man with gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. Son, I've seen a lot of strange things in 30 years of military service, but this tops all of them. Patricia, you better have a damn good explanation for why my daughter's apartment has turned into something out of a science fiction movie. It's not Patricia's apartment. Dad, Dr. Wells replied calmly, and the explanation is about to walk through that door. As if summoned by her words, Zephyria entered the living room in her true form. Marcus heard General Wells's sharp intake of breath as he got his first look at the Dragon Queen of Avaleth. She stood nearly 8 feet tall, her scales shifting through deep blues and purples in the light from her crystal formations. Her wings folded against her back still dominated the space, and the crown floating above her head cast intricate shadows on the walls. General Wells, Zephyria said aloud, her voice now audible and carrying the authority of someone accustomed to command. I am Queen Zephyria of Avaleth. Your planet is in immediate danger, and I believe that working together may be our only hope of preventing a catastrophe that would destroy both our civilizations. General Wells holstered his weapon but kept his hand near it, his military training warring with the impossibility of what he was witnessing. Ma'am, I've dealt with foreign dignitaries before, but this is somewhat outside my usual protocols. Zephyria's laugh was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. I appreciate your directness, General. It confirms what I have observed about human nature during my time here. Your species doesn't waste time on elaborate ceremonies when facing real threats. Over the next 2 hours, Zephyria provided General Wells with detailed intelligence about the approaching enemy fleet. She projected holographic displays that showed ship configurations, weapon capabilities, and tactical patterns that made the general's eyes widen with professional appreciation and growing concern. 12 ships, each the size of an aircraft carrier, armed with weapons that can crack tectonic plates, he summarized grimly. Shields that can deflect nuclear weapons and sensors that can detect individual life signs from orbit. Ma'am, with all due respect, our current military capabilities might as well be Stone Age technology against this kind of threat. Under normal circumstances, you would be correct, Zephyria agreed. However, my enemies have a critical weakness that your people are uniquely positioned to exploit. They cannot comprehend concepts that fall outside their established logical frameworks. Human creativity and unpredictability represent something their strategic computers cannot calculate or prepare for. Marcus, who had been quietly listening to the conversation, suddenly spoke up, like the cats. Everyone turned to look at him. "Explain that," General Wells ordered. "The street cats," Marcus continued, his thoughts racing. "Zephyria said they've been behaving differently since she arrived. They're organized now, almost like they're following orders. But to her enemies, they would just look like random animals." Zephyria's eyes brightened with approval. "Precisely. During my recovery, I established a communication network with the local feline population. They have been serving as my early warning system and, when necessary, as my messengers. My enemies' sensors are calibrated to detect technological communications and military movements. They would never think to monitor the behavior patterns of domestic animals." Dr. Wells leaned forward. "Are you saying the cats around the building have been acting as some kind of surveillance network?" "Among other things," Zephyria confirmed. "Cats exist in virtually every human settlement on Earth. They move freely through areas where military personnel would be noticed immediately. Most importantly, they are ignored by security systems designed to detect human or technological threats." General Wells was quiet for several long moments, his strategic mind clearly working through the implications. "What kind of intelligence have you gathered through this network?" "The enemy advanced scouts arrived in your solar system yesterday," Zephyria replied, her tone becoming more serious. "They have established a hidden base on what you call the far side of your moon. From there, they are conducting detailed scans of Earth's population centers, military installations, and communication networks. They will begin their primary assault within 72 hours. 72 hours, the general repeated. "That's not enough time to mount any kind of conventional defense, even if we had weapons that could actually damage their ships." "Which is why we must think unconventionally," Zephyria said. "General, your daughter mentioned that you have access to certain classified research projects. I need to know about any experiments involving consciousness transfer, quantum entanglement communication, or dimensional manipulation." General Wells and Dr. Wells exchanged a look that suggested they were both thinking of the same thing. "There is something," the general admitted reluctantly. "Project Mirror Lake at the Nevada facility. They've been working on a theoretical communication system that uses quantum entanglement to create instantaneous contact across any distance. The problem is that it requires a living consciousness to serve as the quantum anchor point." "That could work," Zephyria said thoughtfully. "My species has natural quantum consciousness abilities. I could serve as the anchor point for a communication network that would allow your military commanders to coordinate their forces instantly, regardless of distance or enemy jamming. But that's just communication," Marcus pointed out. "We still need weapons that can actually hurt their ships." Zephyria smiled, showing teeth that gleamed like polished metal. "That, Marcus, is where human creativity becomes our greatest weapon. My enemies build their ships and shields to withstand conventional energy weapons, kinetic projectiles, and even nuclear explosions. But they have never encountered what you call biological warfare." Dr. Wells sat up straighter. "You want us to attack alien ships with diseases?" "Not diseases," Zephyria clarified. "Earth cats." The room fell silent as everyone tried to process this statement. General Wells was the first to speak. "I'm sorry, Your Majesty, but could you elaborate on that?" "My enemy's ships are living entities, grown rather than built," Zephyria explained. "They require specific environmental conditions to remain healthy, including precise atmospheric compositions and temperature ranges. Earth cats, as I have discovered, produce certain pheromones and bioelectric fields that are highly toxic to the organic components of Avaleth technology." Marcus felt a grin spreading across his face as he began to understand. "You're saying that cats are like poison to their ships?" "More than poison," Zephyria confirmed. "Prolonged exposure to feline biosignatures causes complete system breakdown in Avaleth organic technology. The effect is so specific that my people have laws requiring the extermination of any cat-like species they encounter during planetary conquests." General Wells stood up and began pacing, his mind clearly working through tactical possibilities. "How many cats would we need? And how would we get them onto enemy ships?" "The beauty of this approach," Zephyria replied, "is that we don't need to get the cats onto the ships. We need to get the ships to come to the cats. If we can lure the enemy fleet into Earth's atmosphere and close enough to populated areas, The combined bioelectric field of millions of domestic cats will create a planet-wide defensive barrier. But how do we get them to come down here instead of just bombing us from orbit? Dr. Wells asked. Zephyria's expression became predatory. We make them think they found me hiding in a location so important that they need to capture it intact. General, how would your military react if they discovered that an enemy leader was hiding inside the Pentagon or the White House? They'd want to take the facility intact to gather intelligence, General Wells replied immediately. Then his eyes widened as he understood. You want to use yourself as bait? I want to use Marcus as bait, Zephyria corrected. My enemies know that I was severely injured. They will assume that I've formed a symbiotic relationship with a human host for survival. If they detect my energy signature emanating from a human in a location of obvious strategic importance, they will be compelled to investigate personally. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Wait, what do you mean by symbiotic relationship? And what exactly would I need to do? Zephyria moved closer to him, her golden eyes serious. I would need to share a portion of my consciousness with you, creating a genuine psychic link that my enemy's sensors would detect. To them, it would appear that I have bonded with you for survival, making you a valuable prize worth capturing alive. And the strategic location? General Wells asked. The NORAD facility, Zephyria replied. It's isolated enough that the cats in the surrounding area can be evacuated to safety, but important enough that my enemies would believe a desperate alien might choose it as a hiding place. More importantly, it has the communication infrastructure necessary to coordinate the quantum entanglement network across all of Earth's major population centers. General Wells was quiet for a long moment. Your Majesty, you're asking me to bet the survival of our planet on the theory that house cats can disable alien warships. No, General, Zephyria replied firmly. I'm asking you to bet the survival of our planet on the proven fact that humans can accomplish the impossible when properly motivated. The cats are just the tool. Your people's courage, creativity, and refusal to surrender even against overwhelming odds, that is the real weapon we're counting on. Marcus looked around the room at the faces of the people who had somehow become his allies in humanity's first interstellar war. When do we start? The next 18 hours passed in a blur of activity that Marcus could never have imagined. General Wells had made several carefully worded phone calls that resulted in an unmarked military transport arriving at Marcus's building before dawn. The general's explanation to his superiors had been deliberately vague, a potential terrorist threat requiring immediate consultation with civilian specialists, but sufficient to mobilize the resources they needed. The flight to NORAD took place in a specially modified cargo plane that had been hastily equipped with the quantum entanglement equipment from Nevada. Marcus spent most of the journey trying not to think about what would happen when Zephyria shared her consciousness with him. Dr. Wells monitored his vital signs while technicians prepared the quantum communication array. It's not as frightening as it sounds, Zephyria assured him as they approached Colorado. Think of it as becoming temporarily bilingual in a language you never knew existed. You'll still be yourself, but you'll also have access to my knowledge and abilities. What if something goes wrong? Marcus asked. What if the connection damages my mind somehow? Then I would spend the rest of my very long life ensuring that you received the best care my civilization can provide, Zephyria replied simply. Marcus, you have already risked everything to help a creature you thought was just a sick cat. That level of compassion is rare, even among my own people. I will not allow your kindness to go unrewarded. Inside NORAD's operations center, the atmosphere was tense with barely controlled chaos. Military personnel worked alongside civilian scientists to establish the quantum communication network, while intelligence analysts tracked the approaching enemy fleet through telescopes and radio arrays. General Wells had briefed a select group of officers on the situation, though Marcus noticed that most of them looked at Zephyria with expressions that suggested they still weren't entirely convinced this wasn't an elaborate hallucination. The quantum entanglement procedure took place in a specially shielded chamber, deep within the mountain complex. Marcus lay on a medical bed surrounded by equipment that hummed with barely contained energy, while Zephyria positioned herself nearby in her true form. Dr. Wells monitored both of them from a control room separated by thick glass. Are you ready? Zephyria asked, her mental voice gentle but serious. Marcus took a deep breath and nodded. Let's save the world. The connection began as a warm sensation spreading from the base of his skull, like sunlight filtering through water. Gradually, Marcus became aware of a presence in his mind that was distinctly not his own, ancient, powerful, and infinitely patient. Along with the presence came knowledge. Star maps showing the positions of hundreds of worlds, technical specifications for technologies that human science wouldn't develop for centuries, and strategic information about civilizations spanning half the galaxy. But what impressed Marcus most was the emotional content of Zephyria's consciousness. Beneath her regal bearing and vast knowledge, he sensed a deep loneliness that came from centuries of making decisions that affected billions of lives. He also felt her genuine affection for humanity, a species she saw as possessing the wonder and creativity that her own people had lost to the weight of their advanced civilization. "The connection is stable," Dr. Wells reported from the control room. "Both subjects show normal brain activity, though Marcus's patterns indicate unprecedented neural integration." Through Zephyria's enhanced senses, Marcus could now perceive the enemy ships as they broke orbit around the moon and began their approach to Earth. 12 massive vessels, that looked more like living creatures than spacecraft, descended through the upper atmosphere, their organic hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that served as both communication and targeting systems. "They've detected the quantum signature," Zephyria announced, her voice now carrying harmonics that resonated through the mountain complex. "The fleet commander believes he has located me hiding within this facility. They're approaching for close-range confirmation." General Wells coordinated the response from the main operations center, where dozens of screens showed military bases around the world implementing the hastily devised defense plan. In major cities across 6 continents, animal control officers, veterinarians, and volunteers had been mobilized to gather cats into designated safe zones. The official explanation was a precautionary measure against a potential biological weapon attack, which wasn't entirely false. Marcus watched through security cameras as thousands of cats were transported to schools, community centers, and other buildings throughout major metropolitan areas. What struck him most was how willingly the cats participated in their own evacuation. Even feral animals that normally avoided human contact seemed to understand that something important was happening and cooperated with their rescuers. "The feline bioelectric field is reaching critical mass in 17 major population centers," reported Dr. Wells, monitoring readings from sensors that had been hastily deployed around the world. "If the enemy ships maintain their current descent pattern, they'll enter the effective range within 12 minutes. Through Zephyria's consciousness, Marcus could sense the enemy commander's growing confidence. The ships were arranging themselves in a formation designed to capture NORAD intact, while eliminating any potential escape routes. Their sensors clearly detected what appeared to be an injured dragon queen bonded with a human host, exactly the prize they had been hoping to find. "They're taking the bait," General Wells confirmed as radar screens showed the 12 ships descending to an altitude of 50,000 feet. "All units prepare for Phase 2. Phase 2 involved something that Marcus still found difficult to believe would work. In animal shelters, pet stores, and homes around the world, millions of cats had been equipped with small devices that would amplify and broadcast their natural bioelectric signatures. The technology, adapted from equipment normally used to study animal behavior, created a planet-wide network of biological transmitters activating feline amplification network, announced a technician whose job description probably hadn't included anything like this when he joined the military. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Through Zephyria's enhanced perception, Marcus could see waves of bioelectric energy radiating outward. From every major population center on Earth, the energy was invisible to human senses but created a field that registered on the enemy ship's organic sensors like a planet-wide scream of alarm. The lead enemy ship began to lose altitude rapidly, its organic systems failing as they tried to process the overwhelming sensory input. Marcus watched through external cameras as the massive vessel, designed to withstand nuclear weapons, was brought down by the collective electromagnetic field of 10 million house cats. "It's working," Dr. Wells reported with amazement in her voice. "Enemy Ship 1 is showing complete system failure. Ships 2 and 3 are attempting to climb back to safe altitude, but their organic navigation systems are compromised." Through the quantum communication network, military commanders around the world coordinated the response. Surface-to-air missiles, previously useless against the enemy shields, now found their targets as the alien ship's defensive systems failed. Fighter jets that had been grounded as obsolete in the face of superior technology now swarmed around the disabled vessels like angry wasps. But the real victory came from an unexpected source. As the enemy ships crashed or made emergency landings in areas surrounded by cats, their crews abandoned their vessels and attempted to escape on foot. What they found waiting for them were not just human military forces, but organized groups of the very creatures that had disabled their ships. Marcus watched in fascination through security cameras as street cats throughout the world seemed to coordinate their movements with military precision. In Tokyo, a group of enemy survivors found themselves surrounded by hundreds of cats that had somehow positioned themselves to block every escape route. In London, alien soldiers who had survived their ship's crash discovered that every building they tried to enter was already occupied by cats that hissed and postured aggressively at their approach. The cats are acting like they're conducting a coordinated military operation, General Wells observed as reports came in from around the world. It's like they know exactly what they're doing. They do, Zephyria replied through Marcus. I've been in contact with the global feline population for weeks. They understand that these invaders represent a threat to their human companions. Cats may seem independent, but they are fiercely protective of their territory and their chosen humans. Within 6 hours, the threat was over. 11 of the 12 enemy ships had been disabled, and their crews captured. The 12th ship had attempted to flee back to space, but suffered complete system failure while still in Earth's atmosphere, crashing harmlessly into the Pacific Ocean where rescue ships were already standing by. As Marcus felt the immediate danger receding, he became aware of something else through his connection with Zephyria, signals from deep space growing stronger by the hour. Ships were approaching from the direction of her home system, but these carried different energy signatures. Your people? Marcus asked mentally. My loyal fleet commanders, Zephyria confirmed, relief evident in her mental voice. Word of the enemy's defeat has already reached Avaleth. They're coming to Inver. 3 weeks after what the media had dubbed the Cat Defense, Marcus found himself standing in a conference room at the United Nations headquarters in New York, wearing a suit that cost more than his monthly rent and trying not to fidget with his translator earpiece. Around the table sat representatives from every major nation on Earth, along with General Wells, Dr. Wells, and several other officials who had been briefed on the true nature of recent events. The public had been told that an international military exercise had successfully repelled a simulated attack using revolutionary new defense technologies. The story wasn't entirely false, though it left out several important details about aliens, dragon queens, and the weaponization of house cats. Marcus suspected that the full truth would come out eventually, but for now, the world's governments were still figuring out how to handle humanity's first interstellar diplomatic relationship. Zephyria sat at the head of the table in a form that was mostly human in appearance, but retained her characteristic golden eyes and the subtle, shifting patterns in her skin that revealed her true nature to anyone who looked closely. She wore robes that seemed to be cut from starlight itself, and the crown floating above her head had been adjusted to project a more reassuring glow than its full royal configuration. The Avaleth High Council has agreed to establish formal diplomatic relations with Earth, she announced, her voice carrying the authority that had impressed General Wells during their first meeting. However, they have also made it clear that this alliance will be contingent on humanity, demonstrating the same innovative thinking and protective instincts that made your recent defense possible. The Secretary General leaned forward. Your Majesty, what exactly does that mean in practical terms? It means, Zephyria replied, that my people are interested in more than just military cooperation. The galaxy is full of civilizations with advanced weapons and powerful fleets. What makes humanity unique is your ability to find solutions that no one else considers, and your willingness to risk everything to protect creatures that most species would consider insignificant. She gestured toward Marcus, who still felt somewhat out of place in this gathering of world leaders. Marcus Chen represents the qualities that my people find most admirable about humanity. He showed kindness to a creature he believed was just another stray cat, without expecting any reward or recognition. When he learned that his actions could save or doom his entire planet, He didn't hesitate to volunteer for a dangerous mission. That combination of compassion and courage is remarkably rare among spacefaring civilizations. The Chinese representative spoke up. Are you saying that our membership in this galactic community depends on continuing to demonstrate these particular human traits? More than that, Zephyria confirmed. The High Council wants Earth to serve as a rehabilitation center for species that have lost touch with concepts like altruism and self-sacrifice. There are dozens of civilizations in our local stellar group that have become so advanced technologically that they've forgotten how to care about anything beyond their own immediate interests. They need to relearn what my people call primitive virtues. Marcus felt the weight of dozens of eyes turning toward him. I'm sorry, but are you saying that other aliens are going to come to Earth to learn how to be nice to each other? In essence, yes, Zephyria replied with obvious amusement. Your planet would become something like an embassy and cultural exchange center, where representatives from various species could observe human behavior and participate in activities designed to reawaken their capacity for empathy and cooperation. The implications of this arrangement began to sink in around the table. The Brazilian representative was the first to voice what everyone was thinking. Your Majesty, this would fundamentally change human civilization. We're talking about regular contact with alien species, access to advanced technologies, and our planet becoming a center for interstellar diplomacy. Yes, Zephyria agreed simply. The question is whether humanity is prepared for such changes. General Wells, who had been quietly reviewing documents throughout the meeting, looked up with a thoughtful expression. Your Majesty, you mentioned technologies. What kind of advances are we talking about? Zephyria waved her hand, and holographic displays appeared above the conference table showing medical devices, energy systems, and transportation technologies that looked like they belonged in science fiction movies. Clean energy systems that could eliminate resource scarcity, medical treatments that could extend human lifespans by centuries, and transportation networks that would make travel between Earth's continents as simple as walking to your neighbor's house. But there would be conditions, the German representative stated, reading between the lines. Indeed, Zephyria confirmed, these technologies would be shared gradually, as humanity proves its ability to use them responsibly. More importantly, humans would be expected to help rehabilitate other species by demonstrating how to use advanced capabilities for the benefit of all life, rather than just for personal gain. Dr. Wells, who had been surprisingly quiet during the meeting, finally spoke up. Your Majesty, you keep referring to humanity as if we're a single unified species. But we're not. We have different cultures, different values, and a long history of conflict among ourselves. How can we teach other species about cooperation when we often struggle with it ourselves? Zephyria's expression became more serious. That is precisely why humanity is so valuable as a rehabilitation center. Your species is currently experiencing the transition from a primarily competitive civilization to one that recognizes the benefits of cooperation. Other species need to see that this transition is possible, and they need to observe how it happens naturally rather than being imposed by force. Marcus found himself thinking about the street cats that had started this entire adventure. It's like socializing feral cats, he said aloud, then felt embarrassed as everyone turned to look at him again. Explain that analogy, Zephyria requested with obvious interest. Well, Marcus continued, feeling more confident. When you're trying to socialize feral cats, you can't just force them to be friendly. They have to learn to trust by watching other cats interact peacefully with humans. They need to see that cooperation brings benefits, but they have to choose it for themselves. Precisely, Zephyria said, her approval evident. Many advanced species have become so isolated and competitive that they've forgotten how to form beneficial relationships with other civilizations. They need to observe a species that is actively learning these lessons, making mistakes and finding ways to overcome those mistakes. The Russian representative leaned back in his chair. So we would essentially become teachers for alien species, while simultaneously learning from them. A mutual education system, the French representative added thoughtfully. We help them rediscover empathy and cooperation, while they help us advance technologically and scientifically. But what about the risks? Asked the British representative. How do we know that some of these species won't decide that humanity is too primitive or too dangerous to be allowed to continue existing? Zephyria's expression became predatory. reminding everyone in the room that she was, despite her diplomatic demeanor, a being capable of great power. Because any species that threatens humanity would find themselves facing the combined military forces of the Avaleth Empire, which now considers Earth to be under our protection. The alliance that saved your planet from invasion also guarantees your security going forward. General Wells nodded approvingly. A mutual defense treaty. More than that, Zephyria clarified. A cultural partnership that recognizes humanity as a sovereign species, with unique capabilities that benefit the entire galactic community. Your people would have the right to accept or reject contact with any particular species, and the Avaleth fleet would enforce those decisions. Marcus looked around the table at the faces of the world's most powerful leaders, all of them clearly struggling to process the magnitude of what was being offered. What happens if we say no, he asked. What if humanity decides we're not ready for this kind of responsibility? Zephyria was quiet for a long moment before answering. Then you would continue to develop as you have been, and the galaxy would continue to be a place where advanced civilizations view less developed species as resources to be exploited or obstacles to be eliminated. The compassion and creativity that saved your world from invasion would remain confined to a single planet, while countless other worlds fall to the kind of thinking that nearly destroyed Earth 3 weeks ago. The weight of that statement settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Marcus realized that this decision wasn't just about humanity's future, it was about whether the qualities that made humans human would have a chance to influence the broader galaxy. How long do we have to decide? Asked the Secretary General. The High Council will expect an answer within 1 Earth year, Zephyria replied. During that time, small groups of humans will be invited to visit Avaleth and other allied worlds to better understand what this partnership would entail. Similarly, carefully selected representatives from various species will visit Earth to assess humanity's suitability for the rehabilitation program. As the meeting wound down and the various representati, 1 year later Marcus stood on the observation deck of the Avaleth diplomatic vessel, Serenities, Dawn watching Earth grow larger in the viewing portal as they returned from a 3-month journey through what the galactic community called the Cooperation Sector. Behind him, representatives from 12 different species chatted quietly in the ship's common area, their various forms creating a scene that would have seemed impossible just months earlier. The past year had transformed both Earth and Marcus in ways he was still learning to understand. The rehabilitation program had begun with small groups of carefully selected individuals from both sides, and the results had exceeded everyone's expectations. Species that had been locked in millennia-old conflicts were discovering common ground through simple activities, like caring for Earth's abundant animal life and participating in human community service projects. Marcus had found himself serving as a guide and translator, not for language differences but for the cultural concepts that many advanced civilizations had forgotten. He had taught a silicon-based species from the Rigel system how to appreciate music by having them listen to cats purring. He had helped a hive mind collective from Proxima Centauri understand individual choice by working with them in an animal shelter where each cat had distinct personality traits and preferences. Most remarkably, he had watched as these interactions changed the visiting aliens in fundamental ways. The silicon-based beings had returned to their homeworld and revolutionized their society by introducing the concept of aesthetic appreciation to their purely logic-based culture. The hive mind collective had established the first individual rights protections in their species' history, recognizing that diversity of thought led to better problem-solving than perfect consensus. The Council is pleased with the program's progress, Zephyria said, joining Marcus at the viewing portal. Over the months, she had become comfortable enough with him to maintain a more relaxed form that blended her true appearance with human characteristics, making her easier for both species to interact with. It's been incredible to watch, Marcus replied, gesturing toward the mixed group behind them. 6 months ago, the Zentorians and the Helix Foundation representatives couldn't be in the same room without their security protocols activating. Now they're collaborating on a project to establish interspecies animal rescue centers. Your influence, Zephyria noted with pride. You showed them that caring for vulnerable creatures creates bonds that transcend species differences. The Council has voted to expand the program to include 50 additional worlds over the next decade. Marcus felt a familiar mix of excitement and responsibility. That's going to require a lot more human volunteers. Are people ready for that kind of commitment? More than ready, Zephyria assured him. Applications for the cultural exchange program have reached nearly 10 million worldwide. Apparently, humans are eager to share their perspective with the galaxy. As they discussed the expansion plans, Marcus noticed one of the passengers approaching them. A being called Thren who belonged to a species that had originally been considered too aggressive for the rehabilitation program. Thren resembled a cross between a wolf and a dinosaur, with metallic scales and eyes that glowed with their own inner light. When the Thren delegation had first arrived on Earth, military advisors had recommended keeping them under constant surveillance. Marcus, Thren said in the carefully measured tones that his species used when speaking Standard Galactic, I wanted to thank you before we reach Earth. Thank me for what? Marcus asked, still sometimes surprised when the more intimidating species expressed gratitude. For teaching me about, what is the human word? Hope, Thren replied, his glowing eyes dimming slightly, and what Marcus had learned was a sign of deep emotion among his people. My species had not experienced hope for over 3,000 Earth years. We had accepted that existence was merely about survival and resource acquisition. Marcus remembered the moment Thren was referring to. It had happened during their second week on Earth, when they had visited a children's hospital where therapy animals worked with young patients. Thren had been assigned to observe a session where a golden retriever named Buddy helped a 7-year-old girl with leukemia practice her physical therapy exercises. That child was dying, Thren continued, and yet she spent her time teaching your dog new tricks so that he could help other children feel better. Your species faces suffering by trying to reduce the suffering of others. This concept was incomprehensible to us before witnessing it. And now? Marcus asked. Now my people are establishing what you would call compassion centers on our homeworld, Thren replied. We are learning to care for our young not just as future workers but as individuals deserving of happiness. The changes are profound. As Thren returned to his seat, Marcus reflected on similar conversations he had had throughout the year. Each species brought their own perspective and challenges to the program, but they all seemed to leave with a renewed understanding of concepts that humans took for granted: empathy, cooperation, the value of individual life, and the importance of protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. Earth controlled to Serenity's dawn came a transmission from the planet's surface. You are cleared for landing at the International Species Exchange Center. Welcome home, Ambassador Chen, Marcus smiled at the title, though he still felt more comfortable thinking of himself as a veterinary technician who had accidentally become humanity's unofficial teacher to the galaxy. The International Species Exchange Center was a sprawling complex that had been built in the Nevada desert over the past year, designed to accommodate the varying environmental needs of dozens of different species while providing spaces for the cross-cultural education programs that had become the foundation of Earth's new role in galactic society. As their ship descended through Earth's atmosphere, Marcus could see the center growing larger below them. Landing pads designed for everything from crystal-based ships to living vessels that required nutrient baths dotted the landscape. Gardens adapted for different atmospheric compositions provided recreation areas for visiting species. Most importantly, a massive veterinary and animal rehabilitation facility served as the heart of the complex, where beings from across the galaxy learned about compassion by caring for Earth's creatures. The cats are going to be excited to see you, Zephyria observed as they prepared for landing. Marcus laughed, thinking about the feline population that had essentially become the unofficial mascots of the exchange center. The original street cats from his Seattle neighborhood had been relocated to the facility, where they now served as compassion instructors for visiting aliens. Their ability to judge the character of different species had proven remarkably accurate, and their acceptance of a new visitor was considered a strong indicator of that species' potential for successful rehabilitation. I'm more excited to see them, Marcus admitted. It feels like coming home. After landing, Marcus spent several hours debriefing with the program administrators and helping the returning visitors settle into their temporary accommodations. But as evening approached, he found himself walking the familiar paths to the cat habitat, carrying a bag of the same kibble he had been feeding strays in Seattle over a year ago. Luna was waiting for him in her favorite spot on a wooden platform that overlooked the entire habitat. She had chosen to remain in her cat form most of the time while at the center, finding that it made the visiting aliens more comfortable, while still allowing her to maintain her role as Zephyria when official duties required it. "How was the journey?" she asked mentally as Marcus sat down beside her and began filling food bowls. "Productive," Marcus replied aloud, having learned that speaking normally while receiving mental communication felt more natural than trying to think his responses. "The Zentorians want to establish a permanent embassy here, and the Helix Foundation is requesting permission to bring a delegation of their young to participate in our youth education programs." "And you? How are you handling the responsibility of being humanity's representative to the galaxy?" Marcus considered the question as cats began emerging from various hiding spots to investigate their dinner. Around them, the complex hummed with activity as beings from dozens of worlds participated in programs designed to help them rediscover the capacity for caring about others. In the distance, he could see a group of crystalline entities learning to appreciate Earth music, while a family of feline-like aliens from the Vega system observed human children playing with kittens. "It doesn't feel like responsibility anymore," Marcus said finally. "It feels like I'm just doing what humans do, naturally, taking care of creatures that need help and trying to make the world a better place for everyone who lives in it." Luna's purr carried notes of contentment and approval. "The council has made a decision about the program's future," she said. "They want to make the arrangement permanent. Earth will become the official compassion center for this entire galactic sector, with humans serving as cultural ambassadors and rehabilitation specialists." "What does that mean for us?" Marcus asked. "It means," Luna replied, her golden eyes reflecting the lights of the complex around them, "that a veterinary technician from Seattle who couldn't bear to see hungry cats going unfed has